Salutations Rangers, General Bradley 101, back again with some more lore. Malcador the Sigillite, better known as Malcador the Hero, one of the most impactful, most important, and most mysterious characters in all of Warhammer 40k. Known for being a very special type of human, but more importantly, the closest confidant and personal best friend to the big golden god of humanity known as Big E. Most people think that these two were two sides of the same coin, utterly inseparable, utterly loyal, and the best of mates. And this is indeed true. Yet, like all best friends, they did disagree on certain things, and they kept each other sharp. So in today's video, ladies and gentlemen, join me as we take a look at 3 different times that the Emperor and Malcador really did disagree on some very big important things. How humanity should be governed, whether humanity can be left alone, is the Emperor really doing the right thing, and what legacy will they be leaving for the rest of humanity. So strap in and buckle up, and let's get crack-a-lackin' on with today's video as we take a look at Malcador versus the Emperor. As per usual, sources listed here, have fun with them. So, before we can talk about this in its totality, we need to first answer the question, who exactly is Malcador? Malcador is ancient, several ancient, at least 6,000-year-old plus. He's a psychic, not to mention one of the few beings that the Emperor could actually call a friend, but not just like a friend, like a genuine mate. As to where he came from and why he's called the Sigillite, we don't really know, not gonna lie with that one, Chief. We do know, however, that Sigillite is a rank. More particularly, he came from the Sigillite Order. As to why and who these guys are, no idea. But we do know that has something to do with AI, aka Abominable Intelligence. But how they dealt with it, it's really unknown. There are 2 main theories. One, that either they helped make the AI and then subsequently destroyed it, or they will create it purely as a psychic human response to AI, fighting techno fire with magic fire. Again, we don't really know. We do, however, know that he was at the Emperor's side since the very start, as he mentions this himself in the audio drama Malcador. The first Lord of the Imperium, it was Malcador who actually helped Emperor become the Emperor, which means that he played a very important role in his life. And as we get into the later bits, we see that Malcador was really important to the Emperor, and one of the very few people that he genuinely trusted. Not to mention, when Big E himself had to dip, it was him, Malcador, that was proclaimed as his regent, not any of the primarchs. Because Horus may have been the War Master and Dawn's Praetorian of Terror, but each of them had their own scope of their command. Yet when it comes to being a regent, as any of my history buffs will know, the regent had command of everything when the Emperor was not present. And that could indeed include the primarchs. Of course, this does beg the question, why on earth did Malcador remain so loyal to the Emperor? Of course, him being loyal was the reason why Big E loved him, but why? When you take a look at the Emperor's story, almost every single being in the galaxy that either compares to him, being the Perpetuals or anything of that, left Big E. They just dipped him, with like 2 exceptions maybe, if at that, and those are like asterisks. Malcador truly is loyal, beyond loyal, loyalty unto a fault, some might say. But that is where I have to disagree, because like any good, true, loyal friend, they call you out on your bullshit. And we know that Malcador disagrees with the Emperor very often, actually. The best and most famous example of Malcador and the Emperor disagreeing is seen in Scars, when Roladon, Malcador, and Valdor discuss the opening stages of the Horus Heresy, and Malcador drops this line: "You brothers, such a nest of rivalries. I warned him to make you sisters. That would make things more civilized. He thought I was joking. I wasn't." But the nature of the primarchs is one of the many debates held between the Sigillite and Master of Mankind, with another being seen in the novels The Sigillite, more particularly about what the Emperor is supposed to be for humanity. "The Emperor and I have a debate," he said. "It has been running for a long time, and I miss our discussions now he is gone. Such a powerful intellect. Blunt, but powerful. And very, occasionally, even a sense of humor. Of sort. Would you credit that?" Hassan listened cautiously. He didn't understand what Malcador meant when he said the Emperor was gone. He was not. Surely he was not. Where would he have gone to? Hassan wanted to ask, but Malcador kept on talking, just as if the absence of the Master of Mankind from the eternal seat of power were a trivial thing, hardly worth lingering over. "This is our debate. He believes that the task of a ruler is to make himself obsolete, so that his people will replace him when they are mature enough. I disagree. I do not think we will ever be mature enough for that. I believe that no one but he will ever be strong enough to hold mankind together, even for a moment. He is quite exceptional, you know. Perhaps in ways he doesn't even understand himself." Malcador looked sidelong at Hassan. "So what do you think, Khalid?" Whom would you side with? Him or me? Hassan took a deep breath. He didn't know whether to be flattered, to be asked, or insulted. Do not hesitate, warned the Sigilite. Choose. I was going to say, began Hassan haltingly. I was going to say that the Emperor will lead us forever. That is what we are taught, what I believe. Malcador nodded. Well said. You are with me then. And you are right, of course. He has such high aspirations for our species. Too high, perhaps. For he does not always appreciate his indispensability. But will he be around forever? That is the great question. That is the current test. This is a really interesting debate when you take a look at it just purely from it. For we see that Big E actually has the right idea. Leaders are meant to prepare their people to take over from them, because a leader will not be around forever. Any of my fellow history buffs will know great kingdoms arise because of amazing rulers, but it is their sons and subsequent rulers who are weak, decadent, and pathetic. It is they who cause the downfall of their once mighty civilization. But in the same vein, the Emperor isn't human. Or he's not meant to be human, he's something different. So Malcador is right also saying that, hey, you are not just human, you are something else. And this is not just a human civilization. This is the human civilization. Therefore, we need someone like you. But it's a really interesting dichotomy. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Which one do you guys think is right? Biggie or Malx? Either way, the Emperor trusted Malcador, as he was there during every important moment and there was no one more trusty and dependable to sit upon the throne of gold. However, Malcador was also a realist for the Emperor, such as, when diplomatic attempts to bring the Selena on Luna failed, Malcador knew that the Imperium would need way more Astartes when discussing the matter with Valdor, as Malcador had just come back from Luna while Valdor tested the first ever Astartes, that being the uncrowned princes, in the first ever battle against Ushultan's rebellion. Once again, showing just how deeply Biggie trusted them, as Biggie expected both of them to act in accord to his will while he was not present, which for someone like Biggie is a wild thing to do. Again, despite how trusted they were, they did indeed differ on a lot of things, such as with the Horus Heresy at its height, Malcador would share more of his thoughts about the primarchs as seen in Vengeful Spirit. So, Malcador is communing with the Emperor while he fights in the webway. Biggie makes time for Malc even while he's fighting. Again, goes to show how much he actually valued this chap. Malcador then begins reporting on the Primarchs. Big ol' Lehman Russ puppy fella has returned from Prospero, and the fluffy lion boy traveled to Ultramar with 20,000 of his boys. Yet there are lots of unsettling rumors about Ultramar. Even Biggie himself doesn't know what's going on because he can't see it because of the Runestone bullshit. When asked what Guilliman was doing, the Emperor would simply say, he's building an empire. Something that should be obvious. And Biggie as well is right because, Imperium Secundus and all that nonsense. Supposedly, the Lion wants to stop Guilliman according to Russ. Of course, we know exactly how that turned out in the end. And we see here that Malcador is actually surprised that the First Legion still stands loyal. He fully expected there to be some nonsense and shenaniganery when it came to the First, as the First had always been special, and the Lion had never been a really good chap when it comes to talking to peeps. Biggie, however, never once doubted their loyalties. For how could he ever doubt his eldest son? Malcador will then question Russ's loyalty, and this is further exacerbated when he makes ready to go and leave to kill Horus. As, when you consider the fact that the Horus Heresy just started, and then you have a boy saying, yeah, I'm gonna take all of my legion, all of my dudes, and I'm gonna go to the big bad evil guy and try and kill him. It's very sus. But more than that, Malcador clearly does not like the idea of one of the Primarchs being an executioner, as he is quoted as thus. But his axe falls a little too readily these days. Biggie, however, doesn't really care. He says that both Horus and more specifically Magnus deserve it both. We see that Malcador still questions Russ's loyalty, while the Emperor reminds him to question all the other Primarchs. In particular, Malcador is told to watch the Khan, who again at this time is still undecided. And this is very interesting when we take a look at it, because we see that both Biggie and Malc have very differing and wilding opinions, and they are very, very, very different. Whereas Malc is a little bit more uneasy about the whole idea of Horus and Magnus, the Emperor is 100% for it. Whilst he questions Russ as well as the Lion, Biggie is 100% behind them. It really is night and day when you compare their thoughts together. Now, how much of this is due to the Emperor's omnipotency versus how much is it to him being an arrogant dick, we don't really know. But again, it's very interesting to see how different their opinions are. The next thing we're going to be taking a look at is from the novel The Board is Set. TLDR time. Moments before the Siege of Terra began, the Emperor and Malcador would play this psychic-based cardboard/game. It's like a weird version of chess, but with the Emperor's tarot also playing into a part. It's kind of fucked up, but hey, it's basically like their personal game that they play. And they decide to play out hypotheticals on the Siege of Terra. And they come to a couple bit of constants. 1. If Dawn leaves Terra, then the Alpha Legion would secure victory. 2. Neither Horus nor the Emperor dies during their games. 3. Malcador accuses the Emperor of cheating because he controls the pieces psychically. Which, I don't really know how that works, but hey. Number 4, they try out several different things, including the Emperor defending, Malcador attacking, and vice versa. Number 5, the games are actually never finished. Malcador wants to see the game finished, because of course you would, but Biggie always stops right at the climax. Oh, you tease. The play pieces are representative of the primarchs, legions and other forces that will play a pivotal part in the Heresy, each of them having 10 playing pieces each. And finally, and most importantly, the Emperor shows that as of right now, he doesn't know what will happen next. And Malcador cannot tell if the game is intended to show Malcador the way, or the Emperor is trying to figure out what to do. It genuinely scares Malcador, and he gives up. And he says particularly, he's not Horus, and he cannot test the Emperor the way that Horus will. "I cannot do this," he said, straightening as he pulled his hands back from the board.
"What would you give for me?"
asked Revelation, once more laying his hand in his lap, his attention focused on the sigillite. "My life."
"You have already given that."
"My death, if you wish to be pedantic."
"What? Of your soul?"
"You say no such thing exists."
"We are short on time. Allow me a little metaphysical shorthand. What is your soul worth to you?"
"I do not understand this question." Uncomfortable under the scrutiny of his lord, Malcador started the board again. "I cannot play like Horus. I do not have his mind, his motivations."
"Then I will assist you."
Revelation reached into the box game, and his fingers reappeared holding a new piece, one never seen before. It was shaped like a jester of the most ancient days, complete with gormless expression. Tiny cap bells tinkled as Revelation shook it.
"This is you, Malcador. The fool. I have used you for millennia to suit my own purposes, and before the end, I will discard you without a second thought."
"I know what you are doing," said Malcador. "You are trying to make me angry, like Horus."
"You exist to further my ambitions, a callus on the toe of history, and nothing more,"
said Revelation, making the slightest sign that he had even listened to what Malcador had said.
"You are just an invisible, nondescript foundation stone in the edifice of what will be my undying glory. I have lied to you from the very first moment, and all that you believe of me, all the universe, and mankind's part in it is fiction. I have manipulated you, abused you, and I will toss you away without a single shred of care. One of my legionaries has more consideration for a bolt that he fires than I do for you, Malcador."
Swallowing hard, the regent reminded himself of what he had just said, that Revelation was trying to elicit an emotional response. And yet, when he looked into the gaze of Revelation, he only saw implacable, unflinching truth. He had never harbored dreams of glory, or even ambitions of temporal power, but Malcador had believed himself valuable. He had taken strength for being a counselor and advisor to the greatest intellect that the human species had ever created, an aid to the most gifted psychic being ever born, companion to an immortal who had lived 1,000 lifetimes.
"I see that you are starting to understand."
A hint of a sneer marred Revelation's expression. He gestured towards the pieces set between them.
"My sons were taken from me, whispered to during transit, to set dark thoughts in their minds. Temptations, lies, propaganda. Tell me, Malcador the Sigillite, how many times have you resisted the efforts of our enemy's lures?"
The regent did not answer, for the dark gods had never attempted to sway him. They had occasionally, and very recently, sought his death, but that was not a distinction he uniquely held. A brutal bark of short laughter made him flinch.
"You thought yourself too royal, your faith in me unshakable. They did not try to recruit you because you have nothing to offer them."
"I have created much for you, in your name," said Malcador, in a wavering tone, searching for clarity. "There would be no Imperium without my efforts."
"In my name."
Never That 3 words sounded so scornful.
You are a master of tax collectors and clerks. No Imperium without you. No Malcador without the Imperium, you mean? What justification would there be to keep you around, with your countless army of bureaucrats to sustain you? Even my remembrances, poets and pick-takers, contributed more to the Great Crusade than you ever did.
He felt a tear roll down his cheek, his whole body quivering with shame. Malcador looked at Revelation with silent pleading, and was rewarded with a contemptuous sigh.
Some call you my left hand.
Revelation held up 5 digits and wiggled them.
It is true, that is all you have ever been, an extension of my will. I twitch a thought and you act. I care nothing for the hopes and fears of my little finger, and less still for yours.
Malcador opened his mouth, but could think of nothing to say.
Do not stare at me like some docile ruminant. You said you fear failing me, but the truth is, you already know that you have. You cannot even bring yourself to hate me when I need you to!
Revelation tossed the pieces aside. It shattered against the wall. He did not even spare a glance for the discarded fragments. There was no hint of remorse. Malcador looked at the splintered pieces of the fool. Betrayal slid a hot knife into his chest. Its fire spread, inflaming his anger, and one thought burned hotter than any other. That Revelation thought he might care about any of what he had just said. I have never harbored ambition or sought glory, growled the regent, his fingers moving to the king of nothing. He thrusts it directly towards the angel defending the emperor's home squares. You seek to wound a pride that does not exist at all, but you think it does, and that is your shame, not mine. It is your pride that will undo all of us, not mine. He turned the top card. The picture that resolved upon itself showed a mountain of dead bodies with a hound at its top, muzzle red with their blood. Massacre! Snapped Malcador. And after this, Malcador finally plays like Horus, beating the Emperor, sacrificing pieces the way that Horus would. And only when the Emperor played Guilliman would Malcador kill Sanguinius. But as the Emperor was about to be defeated, the full piece returned, allowing the Emperor to win the game. And everyone claps and everyone is happy, yet when another person enters the room, they claim they only saw Malcador playing alone. And when Malcador, shooketh, looks back, he sees that the fool is replaced with a crown. And the last card in play is an eagle tearing the throat from a snake. And we see that the Emperor departs some wisdom upon Malcador.
In the ancient days, the fool could say anything to anyone. In theory, at least.
Revelation said. He smiled and warmth flooded through Malcador to see the expression. But then, both the smile and his moment of hope faded.
It was the fool's task to remind kings and queens that they were mortal and weak, not above any other. In the parlance of a later time, they existed to speak truth to power, to defy authority, and most importantly, puncture tyranny.
Again, it's little moments like these that really go to showing a lot of the character of the Emperor. These little intricate moments that show that Big E is indeed something different. Yes, he's arrogant, yes, he's a dick, yes, he's an asshole, yes, he's a redditor, but in the same vein, he is genuinely smart. But only smart, but wise. He understands everything that he does. For people love to comment that the Emperor is a flawed character, but he is not only flaws. He has many great strengths to him. And here we see that despite how close Malcador and the Emperor are, the Emperor truly is something above everyone, including Malcador and the primarchs. Meaning that maybe Malcador's side in the debate has more of a leg to stand on than we would have given him credit for. But ultimately, when Big E leaves, he gives Malcador a sense of what will happen. And y'all know the rest of the story from there. But to end everything off, we're going to be taking a look at In the End and the Death Volume 2, where we see Basileo Foe and a couple of others arguing back and forth about the Emperor, the Imperium, the Horus Heresy, and everything in between. But interestingly enough, Foe, the mad scientist who called the primarchs monsters, even though when he himself also genetically created handcrafted monsters, but that's neither here nor there, ends up bringing out Malcador's private journals, where he wrote about the arguments that he had between him and the Emperor, which ends up shaking everyone. Empiric studies are restricted fields because they are fundamentally dangerous, Xanthus objects. Of course they are, retorts Foe. He snatches up a data slate from the workstation. The Emperor strictly limited all knowledge of the warp. Information was shared with regard to essentials like stellar travel and astral telepathy, and even there it was meted out in very small portions. He denied knowledge, the deep knowledge he had obtained, for reasons of species safety. That is why he banned all religion and anything that encouraged freedom of faith or imagination. He did so because the knowledge of the warp is a contaminant. But look here! He waves the slate at them. In his journals, your beloved Sigilite protests again and again, going back decades, the Emperor's epistemology and his restriction of knowledge. He states clearly that he believes it is a fundamental danger to the Imperium. Look here. He privately petitions the Emperor to relax the directive. He argues that the warp is an existential danger to us, to any psycho-able species, and that it will remain an existential danger whether we know about it or not. Ignorance is the real harm. Malcador, of whom I am growing fonder with every line I read, reasons that it is the primarchs and the Astartes, not to mention the general corpses of mankind. It is they that ought to understand the potential consequences of their actions and their very thoughts. He maintains that they can better protect humanity from the menace of the warp if they are fully aware of its power. And the Emperor rejected this? Asked Andromeda. Yes, for the good of mankind, but what we are facing now, this entire disaster of a war, is what happens when you fail to teach your children properly. Might, religion, or pure faith, unchecked, unbound, risk untoward consequences in the warp? Of course, but ignorance is worse. Your master of mankind believed that no one was good enough, or clever enough, or careful enough to be left alone with the fire. Your Emperor trusted no one, and the misery that reigns on us all is a consequence of that. Firstly, hot damn, that was one hell of an extra script. Secondly, here we see the biggest argument that Big E and the Sigilite had, and ultimately one that doomed the Imperium. This is a common critique that everyone has had of the Emperor. The fact that he hid chaos, the fact that he hid the powers of the warp away from the wider Imperium, the fact that he failed to tell everyone, including his most beloved and trusted of son, that there are demons hiding in the dark, and be careful where you put your hand. Instead, he told them that there was nothing out in the world, and to just listen to him. And ultimately, despite how badly the Imperium doesn't want to admit it, it would cause his death. Not only his death, but the death of his beloved Imperium, many of his sons, and his most honored, cherished, loyal, and hallowed friend. But the Sigilite was no more, and the hero is all that remains. Yet, that begs the question, what if the Emperor listened to Malcador? Was Malcador more aware than the Emperor? The Emperor was not human, yet if he wasn't human, could he truly understand humanity? For does not it take the heart of a human being to understand the methods of that heart, the ways of the mind, the desires of the soul? For the more and more godlike that the Emperor became, the less and less human did he become. Yet we see that Malcador, throughout every one of his times, his trials, his places, wherever he was, he always remained human. And perhaps the reason why the Emperor did not listen to Malcador more and more was not because he was still human, but rather he was becoming something else, something not human, less of emotion, of soul, more of logic, of brain, and of iron. Perhaps that is why. But regardless of why, if, when, where, all these questions of the past tense are irrelevant. For what matters is that ultimately, we see that the Emperor, this gargantuan, immaculate, perfect figure standing above every and all, truly did stand apart. For even someone who was far and above mortal humankind, thousands of years old, with enough psychic might to bring a demigod to their knees, even he disagreed with the Emperor. Even he saw what the Emperor did, and he, at many points, questioned why Revelation, the anathema, this man, why he did what he did. Food for thought, because we all need foils in our life. Some of my best friends are indeed my own foils. In fact, someone who helps me in the channel, who does research for all this, he is one of my best friends, and he and I argue all the time. Not about serious things, mind you, playfully. But people often ask, why do you hang about with someone who's always so mean to you? Well, that's because he keeps me honest. Because I know that if I ever say something that I know is bullshit, that I try and lie to myself, it will be him that will stand there with a stiff back and a stern spine and call me out on my bullshit. And it is his duty as a friend to call me out on my bullshit. But as his friend, and as a friend for myself, it is my duty to listen and to heed his words. We see here that Malcador played the part of the loyal friend, but Big E? Did he really play the part of a loyal friend? Did he heed his friend's advice? Or, as I mentioned before, was he no longer human enough to understand the need for it? Did he believe himself a god? Or was it humanity that told him that he wasn't a god, that he was something different? What was he? And was he right to not listen to Malcador? But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so very much for watching. I do hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think that Mr. Sigilite is right? Do you think that Big E is right? Me personally, I think the Sigilite is more right than the Emperor. I don't fully 100% agree with everything that he says, but definitely way more than Big E. But yeah, let me hear your thoughts down below. But I would say massive thank you to you guys for watching, and even more massive thank you to my official members and Patreoners. Big shout out to my beautiful officer corps, Mr. Eddie V3 and Miss Majora of the Void. Big shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Wolfsmith the Fireheart, Mr. Corns Butcher, Mr. Sean RL7, Mr. Bowen, and Mr. Matthew Merrill. Shout out to my corporal tier members, Mr. Tremeo the Math Kitty, Mr. Lord Rosarius, Miss Shauna Smithers, Mr. Tech Priest Toaster, and Mr. Rambling Hamster. And finally, but absolutely certainly not least, big shout out to my private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan_SVW, Mr. Michael Hader, Mr. Tori's Curse, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Vortis Unum, Mr. Gentle Salamander, and Mr. CMD Nay. I love you. I love you, each and every one of you. You guys are amazing. You guys are beautiful. God damn it, I want to kiss your good little face. Mwah! So today with the memberships, you gain a bunch of access and awesome benefits. My love, my support, my care, early access to videos, awesome behind the scenes stuff, votes, stickers, members, badges, all that godly, goodly stuff. And most importantly, you get to help out your boy and I get to share my love with you. Because these things take a long, long, long time. But remember, this will always be free. So whether you give your boy $1 or not, I will love you just the same. Mwah! 2 kisses in 1 day. Goddamn, I'm spoiling you, but you little cute bunnies deserve it. But ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Y'all make sure to stay true out there, boys and gals. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. Also, my mate is a Will Eater fan, so give me your best Will Eater slander down below. Fuck you, Con. Orfeo would have bodied your ass if Angron didn't step in.